Final conversations with the candidates for Denver Mayor. Mayor Michael Hancock is back. Thank you for your time.
Kyle, glad to be here with you.
You have questioned whether your opponent, Jamie Gillis, is ready to be mayor.
Yes.
Could you talk in practical terms of what you think the risk is if she were to be elected?
Well, I'll give you one example. First of all, this is a very complex multi-agency, as you know, over 24 agencies, 14,600 employees, $2.5 billion budget. The economy is beginning to soften. As I mentioned during the debate, we are seeing our third consecutive quarter of softening receipts from our sales and use taxes. The mayor must know this budget. You don't have a chance to learn it. You got to be able to hit it. And we have been working and building this budget for the last 8 years. We know where we can go to get the city, at least through a brief slowdown without disrupting the core city services. And I think that is the preparation and the work that I'm talking about. It's knowing the city, knowing its agencies, and really knowing the budget and how to get the city through an economic challenge.
So to that end, you like to mention that when you came into office, the economy was not in as good a shape.
Absolutely.
But it was on the upswing. And for the most part, during your time in office, you've enjoyed some good times economically. I imagine being a bad time mayor is very different than being a good time mayor.
Absolutely. You got to also remember when I came in July 2018, I had about 45 days in which to identify $100 million worth of cuts that had to be made before we can swing into the 2012 budget season, our budget. And some very difficult questions I had to ask the electorate in the 2012 election was to de-Bruce the city. Those were tough decisions, but one in which, having known this city, where we were in 2007, 2008, in swinging through the recession, the onset, as well as the deepening of the recession, I understood where we were and that we couldn't cut anymore without really hurting the core services. So those questions were relevant, and only knowing those intimacies around our budget, our operations, could an experienced person ask those questions of the electorate.
You suggested at a recent debate that you did not sexually harass a subordinate, saying that she was going back and forth with you, and you later you apologized for that. You said that you misspoke. Can you say to folks without any kind of equivocation that a boss making sexual advances on a subordinate is wrong and it is sexual harassment?
Well, what I said, and you're right, listen, I was a boneheaded mistake during that Denver Post debate. But I'll tell you today, Kyle, as a matter of law, and our career service attorneys would confirm this, the text would not constitute sexual harassment. But that's not the point. No employee should be made to feel uncomfortable or disrespected in the workplace. And certainly no employer should be sending those type of texts to an employee. I made that point very clear before. That's why I apologized. That's why I consistently took accountability for what I did. And it's important to make sure that people understand. I've learned a lot. I've grown from it. And I continue to grow from it.
It seemed to me like that moment in the debate you were frustrated or you were angry. When people are frustrated and angry, they tend to say two types of things. Things that they don't mean and things that they really mean.
Yeah.
How do you convince voters that you truly did misspeak and that's not how you think about things, as opposed to you got heated and finally the truth of it came out?
Well, it was a long debate. It's been a long campaign. But the reality is that when people say, well, you dropped the mic, I wasn't trying to drop the mic. I realized I started going down a road that I did not want to go down. It was not necessary to have that kind of conversation. My apologies and my acclamation of my missteps and mistakes with regards to this whole situation have been sincere from the beginning. I never want to blame the victim in this situation. I didn't mean to go there. It was unfortunate, and that's why I apologized the next day and said, you know what, that's boneheaded. We shouldn't even have this kind of conversation, not in that sense. My apology stands to the detective, to my family, to the city. And I want to keep it there. I want to make sure that people know I've learned. I've sat with survivors. I've had conversations with them. I heard their pain. I understand how their lives were impacted, their careers were impacted, how their mental health was impacted, their families were impacted. And I believe their stories, and I recognize that this is something that I personally own by myself and need to make sure it never happens again.
So here we are in the middle of a race to run one of America's great cities, and we're talking about something that you did years ago and have apologized in front of me at least 5 times for. Did you expect this is where we were going to end up at the end of this race?
We knew it was going to come back up. I certainly, not in the way in which it has. We knew that, I think it's fair game to acknowledge or to bring up your opponent's mistakes. But to continue to have the browbeat on it, was one that caught me off guard, and that's probably what, being tired, being frustrated in those lights was a mistake that I made. But at the end of the day, we want to focus on the issues going forward in this city and how we all grow and get better and stronger as a result of it.
Your campaign has an ad out that's attacking Jamie Gillis for saying that she comes from a position of white privilege. Why shouldn't she be applauded for acknowledging that?
You know what? Here's the challenge, and I said this on the night of the Denver Post debate. It has been the pattern and the cadence of these types of cultural insensitivities that Jamie continues to make throughout the campaign. You know, acknowledging white privilege. I think that for some of us, quite frankly, that immediately says you walk in a room believing you have a privilege or a leverage that no one else in the room has. Whether we believe it or not, you know, articulate it in a way that is not so blatant and painful. And then we got the other cadence of challenges that are out there in terms of some of her missteps. But today, as we get ready, or we're 24 hours, a little more than 24 hours from election night, I think it's important that we focus on not so much about Jamie's mistakes, which I think are fair game, as are mine in a campaign, but to talk about where this city is headed. And what is next for the city of Denver. A city, to your point, as you just made, in 2010, 2011, wasn't even anywhere on the list of the best places to live in America. Today sits at number 2.
So in acknowledging the media's role in this as well, because a lot of times we're picking topics, we're choosing what we stress and so forth. Does it seem like this race kind of got small?
It got small and it went places that unfortunately, you know, I don't know about Jamie, but I can tell you I never felt the need to go or wanted to go. I want to talk about the issues that really matter to the people of Denver, and the issues that we're going to have to deal with going forward. You know, this is a great city. We got great challenges in front of us as well. Tremendous upside, but great challenges that we have to meet. And I think the people want to hear how we're going to tackle those, you know, whether you're the incumbent or the challenger.
You ran against some really passionate and smart people. Did you hear anything, any idea from any of them that was so good that you've tucked it away and said, I'll do that in a third term?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a couple, you know, lessons. One is, you know, you can't go through this campaign without learning some lessons. And one is we think we're doing enough or a lot to engage people in the community. We realize there are pockets of people who are not connected, whether social media-wise or electronically, that we've got to find a way to better connect people so they understand. And, you know, oftentimes when I've been in some of these house chats, backyard conversations, and I'm talking about what we're doing, people are like, how come we don't know anything about this stuff? Government's not the best, so I have learned that we've got to think differently about how we do that, and we're going to immediately go into a laboratory and figure that out going forward. And then there's some other things that I've made notes of that I can't recall right now, but I think from all the candidates, there were some creative things that they put on the table that I said, yeah, I'm going to think about that one.
I've asked you this question before. I'm going to ask it again because I know that there's an answer in there beyond what you've told me. A lot of Denverites have registered a vote of no confidence in you. And I mean, in that first round of voting, obviously it was more than 50%. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Does that shake anything about your core in terms of how you've led, how you will lead in the future, or is it just, yeah, you win or you lose? No,
I mean, you certainly win or you lose, and I've been enormously blessed, Kyle. Tomorrow, if it is that I don't win, I will not look back on this and say, you know, I feel really bad about this. I'll feel bad because I'm looking forward and I have great passion to continue to serve, but it won't shake me as a person because I've been enormously blessed. I have nothing to regret and nothing really to complain about in terms of the blessing that I've been given. But I think what you saw were 5, 6 people who got in the race, very articulate, passionate about this city. That certainly creates a polarization of the voters. As we were going through the general, we knew that there was a greater possibility that we would be in a runoff than not. And though we were constantly polling and knowing the numbers, we never got to that point where we said, you're not going to have a runoff. We knew that we were going to a runoff. Even though we tried to laser focus it and get right through the middle, it was going to be a difficult time from day one.
Have you gained or lost respect for Jamie Gillis over the course of the campaign?
You know, I didn't really know Jamie Gillis. Let me tell you something. I have respect for anyone who avails himself to this process. As you have seen and you've acknowledged, I've seen and acknowledged, this is very tough. You know, good people running for office, it's very tough on people. That's probably why a lot of good people don't run. But I didn't know very much about Jamie Gillis before this race. But, you know, availing herself, the courage she has shown, yeah, you got to respect that.
For as long as we've known each other, which has been about a decade or so, you've been in public office. Have you stopped to think about a life outside of public office?
Yeah, I think you can't. You got to allow yourself to do that at some point because you have a family, and at some point, you know, I turned 50 in July. Want to think about when you and how you move on with the rest of your life. But right now, I'm passionate about the service. I'm passionate about the city and the things that we're doing, and I think there'll be an appropriate time for that. And there's some things that absolutely I want to do and ultimately do down the road, but. right now it's about serving as mayor of the city and doing the things accomplishing the mission that we've set out to accomplish.
You just prefer not to think about that on Wednesday. No, I get it.
Exactly.
All right, let's wrap up, if you would, by addressing a conflicted voter. So somebody who is considering voting for you, but they have enough of a doubt that they're thinking about not voting or voting for Ms. Gillis.
You know, I think the reality is this. Even our critics have to agree that this city's been well run. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. We have a fiscally sound, fiscally solvent city. We have fixed really the structural imbalance that was inherent in our budget. We are one of the model cities in the country right now. Again, in 2010, 2011, when I took office, Denver wasn't even on the list as one of the top 10 best places to live, or top 100 best places to live. It is today. It's number 2 in the nation. It's well recognized for where we've been. We're not without our challenges, but we should all much rather address the challenges of this great city from a position of strength, progress, and as a thriving city, than versus a city that is challenged and dying. And that's where we are today, and that's why we need to keep moving forward as a great city.
Mayor, thank you for your time. Thank you for being accessible to our questions throughout the campaign. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kyle.
Subscribe to the Next YouTube channel for the best of Next and some other stuff.